Hey GQ, I'm Dr. Eric Bender, a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and today I'll be looking at some patients from a galaxy far, far away. This is the Mental Breakdown. Emperor Palpatine.
I have said it many times, you are the most gifted Jedi I have ever met.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi, Anakin. Even more powerful than Master Yoda.
Emperor Palpatine has been grooming Anakin Skywalker to be his right-hand Sith. He has taken steps that we often see with sexual predators, trying to groom younger kids so that the predators can actually interact with them sexually. One of the first stages is to identify who you're going to groom. What the predator often does is look to see if there's some kind of psychological need or what the predator might think of as a weakness that will allow the predator to come in. Anakin's psychological need is to have a father figure, and he thinks he has that with Obi-Wan. What the Emperor does is moves in on that territory and starts to develop this relationship with Anakin. So he identifies Anakin, he then starts to isolate him and move him away from the people that he does know, from the Jedi. He starts to talk to him about how I know these secrets of the dark side. He tempts Anakin, all of the fears that he has.
You know the dark side?
Anakin, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi. If you wish to become a complete and wise leader, you must embrace a larger view of the Force. Be careful of the Jedi, Anakin.
He's having these conversations with Anakin to show, I can help you. So he's establishing an identity for himself as someone that Anakin can trust. Another stage of grooming is getting the trust of the child. And in this case, Anakin's a teenager.
I hope you trust me, Anakin.
Of course.
I need your help, son.
What do you mean?
I'm depending on you
For what? I don't understand.
to be the eyes, ears, and voice of the Republic.
As you move forward in grooming with a sexual predator, what you would see is that the predator then escalates the behavior with the child, starting to then have accidental touches, maybe bumping of bodies or bumping of elbows. And then that escalates into more sexual contact. So there's been a gradual escalation. The Emperor mirrors that, not with sexual contact, but with information to Anakin saying, hey, I know you have these concerns and I can help you with them. At first it's very informal. And then here we see the formal invitation to finally separate and have this relationship with the Emperor. He's saying, come, fulfill your destiny. And here we see Anakin saying, I'll do whatever. So he has gone through the stages of grooming Anakin, and Anakin is now going to become, as we know, Darth Vader.
Become my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force.
I will do whatever you ask.
Good.
In the case of the Emperor, he, as I learn more about his character, if he were to come in and see me more and more, if I had some records, I would see that he is more of a psychopath. Psychopath is someone who doesn't care innately about other individuals, just uses them to get what they want. The Emperor enacted Order 66, killing all of the Jedi, showing he doesn't really care about any of these individuals. All the people in his empire are really just pawns for him to get what he wants, which is power. And that's what he's using Anakin for. Obi-Wan.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
Obi-Wan had promised Qui-Gon that he would lead Anakin through Jedi training to complete it. So there's this idea of Obi-Wan's master or father figure, Qui-Gon, and now Obi-Wan becomes the master teacher or father figure for Anakin. So even though he's saying he's a brother or saw him as a brother, it can be a different type of relationship. I often will see in psychotherapy, someone will have a frame of reference for how they see someone in their lives. But as we talk more, we realize that maybe that relationship meant something different. Maybe it meant something more than the way someone is describing. And I think that's what's happening here. This was more of a son. So contrasting the death of parents with Mando to the death of a child here, the death of a child is devastating to any parent, and it's really just crushing. In this case, Obi-Wan goes on, and we see that he really is still fixated on the death of Anakin.
Obi-Wan, promise me you will train the boy.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Don't make me kill you. I do not fear the dark side. I see through the lies of the Jedi.
Even when you have lost somebody and you do go from acute grief to more integrated grief, it's still painful to think of somebody gone. You still have a sadness about them, but you can actually think of them without being crushed. Obi-Wan hasn't gotten there. So this is really about grief. This is not about depression. Darth Vader.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Darth Vader is showing some signs of narcissistic personality disorder. A personality disorder refers to how somebody interacts with the world around them, and it's called a disorder if it's vastly different from the cultural norm and what's expected. Narcissistic personality disorder, or narcissistic traits, reflect a need to feel a certain respect, a need to feel important. It reflects, in some cases, a lack of empathy for other people. There's an inability to tolerate someone not praising you or not doing things the way you absolutely feel they should be done because you are so important. There's an exaggeration of how important you are. We see some of those traits here when Darth Vader is trying to strangle this person. He can't tolerate being questioned. He's also trying to put this person in his place by nearly killing him. Some narcissists in the most extreme cases show this lack of empathy. What's very interesting underneath of a narcissism like this is there is quite a fragility. And if you did peel back and get underneath the Darth Vader's layers there's Anakin Skywalker. And remember how fragile he was, thinking he was going to lose his wife, thinking he was going to lose his kids. There's this narcissistic fragility that those around the narcissist aren't necessarily aware of, but those individuals around narcissists, I see this all the time when I see folks in therapy, they feel like they have to make this person happy or something dire will happen. Not necessarily that they're going to be strangled by the Force, but they're actually going to have to deal with something really bad. So a narcissist has a way of making people around them feel they gotta do something. They gotta make sure that person's emotions are okay. And the interesting thing is, the individual thinks it's because I'm so important, everybody should serve me, but it's because they're so fragile. The people around them are sensing that if they don't take care of that person's emotions, this person's gonna fall apart. And it's really, really burdensome to people. When Anakin's a teenager, we see that he has some of the qualities of what is known as borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder reflects that pull between the psychotic or a break from reality and the neurotic, which has to deal with really trying to manage anxiety. But as a teenager, you can't necessarily diagnose somebody or shouldn't necessarily diagnose somebody with borderline personality disorder, particularly in their early teen years. Some of that behavior is actually expected as people grow and learn to deal with their emotions. Also, it's important to state that people with personality disorders are not necessarily inherently violent or evil. It's interesting that the Jedi, I don't think they'd be great psychotherapists. They decide that Anakin's too cloudy and don't really want to deal with him in some ways early on when Yoda is arguing, saying, no, the boy's too clouded, the boy's got too much going on. Obi-Wan's trying to help Anakin understand things differently, but also remember Anakin's getting bombarded with these other ideas from Emperor Palpatine. So there's a push and a pull. The moment Darth Vader throws the Emperor into the electrical field at the end of Return of the Jedi is a moment that audiences cheered on. There's a reuniting there of a father and a son. It's a very moving scene in some ways. It's like the field of electrical dreams. It's somewhat Hollywoodized in that they're trying to move the audience by saying, all right, here's this father who's been so moved by his son and is there to step in and help his son. He really embodies the Force for good in that moment. The Jedi were about peace and stability, And in that moment, Darth Vader has reestablished a relationship with his son. He's established a peace and a calmness, even if it's just short-lived because Darth Vader's about to die. But there is, in that moment, this bond with a father and a son. I see people whose parents are deceased and have long been deceased, and they still wish they could have that relationship with their parent that they never had. It's an innate drive for us from our very early ages to want to please our parents, to want to be with our parents in a certain way. When you become a parent, there's also an innate drive to actually want to be with your kids and want to see them loved and make them feel loved. Here's the moment when Darth Vader has that kick in. The Mandalorian.
Make sure he's protected.
So in The Mandalorian, you see the main character, Mando, which most people call him, really develop a bond with Grogu, the Baby Yoda. Mando himself comes from a place where he has a lot of trauma. His parents tried to hide him during an invasion, and as they hid him and then left him there, they were killed. He was then rescued by Mandalorians, and they took him in. What's interesting is when a child loses a parent, studies show that in the first year or two, just in those first 2 years, those children are at higher risk for depression or anxiety than other children who've lost no one. But over a 7-year study, when they looked ahead, they found that at any point, those children could develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And post-traumatic stress disorder means that there's been an event, a traumatic event. There's some re-experiencing of the event, maybe through dreams or flashbacks when you actually think you're back in that moment at that time. It's not just a memory, but you really feel like you're back there. You have a hyper-vigilance, kind of looking around, making sure that everything's okay. And there might be an avoidance too, avoidance of situations or certain places that make you remember the trauma. It seems like Mando has some of those characteristics of trauma, certainly. Mando doesn't necessarily have a full diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, but he has enough of the criteria to suggest he's certainly dealing with trauma. When a child loses both parents like that, often someone can come in and offer a nurturing environment. When he was adopted by the Mandalorians, he was adopted by that Orthodox group that ended up really focusing on this is the way and really abiding to the creed. So interestingly, he doesn't end up developing personal relationships, which could really help a child deal with the trauma. So it's almost as if he's re-traumatized, where he then comes to this group that doesn't even want to show their faces to each other. They have the Beskar medal on. So he continues to have this trauma of not having a nurturing relationship. So it's such a striking difference when he ends up seeing Grogu and really engaging with him.
Grogu?
Yes. That's his name.
Grogu.
He's laughing and just enjoying this engagement. This is something completely new for him to have that kind of a relationship. So it's an interesting thing to see. The chronic post-traumatic stress or the chronic trauma that he's enduring, what that does to him is it makes him have shallow relationships. He doesn't know how to go deep with people. And it can also make him very suspicious. Now, granted, he's a bounty hunter. He's gonna be suspicious of everybody. And he's not gonna trust anybody or develop relationships with them. He's focused on his work. But in some ways, I'm questioning, does he go to that work because of the way he grew up? We all have relationships and we all have experiences in our lives, early in our lives, as children, and throughout, that really color how we interact with the world. If you look at Mando's experiences, he clearly is distant, separated. He wears a mask almost the whole time. One of the episodes shows him not wearing his mask. He is really anxious. You could see the anxiety on his face. He doesn't know how to have these kinds of relationships or interactions with people. For someone who becomes a mercenary or a bounty hunter, there does seem to be some way to compartmentalize. Some individuals might have what's called cognitive dissonance when they have to do a job that is going to be pretty difficult. So if someone's actually trying to kill an individual, then In order to make it seem like they're not killing a person, they can refer to that person as a job or a target or a case or the next thing they need to accomplish. Mando does talk about jobs and cases, things like that. That's one coping strategy. Also, some individuals are psychopathic. They don't care about anybody. They'll become hitmen or hitwomen, and it's not a problem for them. Mando does not fall into that camp of psychopaths. He's actually really developing a loving, caring relationship with Baby Yoda. Ahsoka.
I cannot train him.
What? Why not? You've seen what he can do.
His attachment to you makes him vulnerable to his fears. His anger.
All the more reason to train him.
No. I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. To the best of us.
Here we see Ahsoka having her own traumatic response to seeing Grogu. She's thinking automatically of Anakin when she said, I've seen what anger can do. I've seen what these kinds of emotions can do and how they can get in the way of training a Jedi. That was incredibly traumatic for everybody to have the rise of Darth Vader and Order 66 carried out. People just died. There was decimation of the Jedi. So she's responding appropriately. At the same time, it's important to know that in reality, feelings are messy sometimes. People can be very scared of feelings. That's what holds people back from coming to therapy sometimes. They're not sure what they're going to discover. How am I going to handle this? This is just going to crush me. But that's what a therapist is for, is to help you figure that out. One of the backstories involves Ahsoka being around age 3 and being seen as very force sensitive and force powerful, and the Jedi were going to come and train her. But Latrans, an imposter who is actually a bounty hunter, ends up intercepting this message or going and taking Ahsoka away and using Ahsoka for their own selfish needs. This is really traumatic and terrifying to Ahsoka, so much so that when she is actually eventually saved, when she goes on to train with the Jedi, she gets nervous. She has a lack of confidence. She's really, really scared.
The Council didn't trust me. So how can I trust myself?
What about me? I believed in you. I stood by you.
I know you believe in me, Anakin, and I'm grateful for that. But this isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer. Not now.
This moment where she's saying, I need to leave, the Council doesn't trust me, it could harken back to memories she might have after she was with Latrans and the imposter, so that she didn't believe in herself then. She was duped. Who can she believe? Who can she trust? How can she trust herself? Here we see maybe that happen again. Often in our lives, there might be a traumatic event that happens or something really difficult, something we've had to deal with, and it defines us in some way, creates a view we have of ourselves. And then other things throughout life push on that, like a scar or a scab. It just lifts it a little bit, picks it a little bit. This probably presses on that moment for her. She doesn't feel trusted. She's not someone who can be trusted because she ended up falling in with this imposter. How can anybody ever trust her? So this is bringing up an old wound for her. Later, as we see in The Mandalorian, we see her more as an adult. She has gotten over those confidence issues. Yet she's also nervous, and appropriately so, given her background and what's recently happened to the Jedi, when she sees that Grogu has this attachment to the Mandalorian. At the same time, she's a very powerful figure, and we'll look forward to seeing how she does in her own series. Jawa. So a bunch of these guys were just in here, and I actually can't find my computer, but I'd be curious as to what's going on with them. These Jawa are actually not kleptomaniacs. Yes, they steal things, but there's a difference between kleptomania and stealing things for a different purpose. Kleptomania is an impulse control disorder. It means that you have this feeling, this urge to steal something, usually not of any monetary value, something that doesn't really matter to you. You go ahead and steal it. It's this urge to do it, and you have to answer to it. Stealing, the way the Jawa do, they're stealing because they're selling things. They're wanting money. That's a big difference between kleptomania and actually stealing for purposes of just getting money and being able to trade things in. We see them hit anybody who's around. So R2-D2 is the victim. We later see in The Mandalorian, Mando's stuff is stripped and he has to bargain to get it back. So they're just out to get money. If you have kleptomania, there can be different time phases of that. You can have brief episodes with long periods of not stealing anything. You can have maybe a short time when there's consecutive or consistent stealing, and then a short time when there's none. And then you can have a chronic kleptomania where it just keeps going and going and going. But it is an impulse control disorder, so you help someone figure out when they have that impulse, what that's about. There might also be what's called comorbid, or also existing at the same time, depression or anxiety. So you want to look and make sure that that's not going on too. Something that also distinguishes the Jawas' behavior from kleptomania is in kleptomania, those individuals often feel some guilt after they've done this. I've seen teenagers just with an outpouring of tears when they have recognized what they're doing. So that element is completely missing from the Jawas. As you can see in The Mandalorian, they're ruthlessly negotiating to get money for what they've stolen. In terms of other things to think about, these aren't pre-planned stealing episodes if it's kleptomania. It's in the moment. And the Jawa clearly planned this. They're hiding out, waiting for R2-D2 to come by. Often the guilt that people can share over the kleptomania is not about being caught. It's not a sadness that they got caught. It can really be a sadness that this is going on for them, that they're dealing with this. The Jawa have no remorse whatsoever. In Obi-Wan Kenobi also, we see them saying, well, I gotta feed my family. So Obi-Wan's buying back parts that the Jawa stole from him too. Kylo Ren formerly Ben Solo, and then again, Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, is actually a very interesting character. From a young age, he was with Leia and Han, his parents. The way that that relationship is depicted in the movie is very, very contentious. Han, as we know, is off gallivanting throughout the galaxy, and Leia's at home. What that does to a child sometimes, to see parents fighting all the time because they comment that they weren't a great couple, to see that kind of fighting at such a young age, it's very hard for a young child not to think that they have something to do with that they might be the cause of this, that if they were only good enough or better or just good, maybe their parents wouldn't be fighting. Maybe Ben would be enough for his dad to make him stay. So we see that he, from a young age, likely had this idea developing in him that he wasn't good. Ben then goes off to Luke's Jedi training camp, and when he's there, he wakes up one night with Luke over him with a lightsaber ready to kill him. Because Luke thinks, wait, this guy's gonna destroy the galaxy, I have to end him. So that's probably another confirmation to Ben that he's really bad. He's just not a good kid. He's not good at all. Children are very intuitive. They're gonna pick up on what their parents think, even if the parents aren't stating to them, hey, you're a loser, you're this, you're that. What is non-verbally communicated, kids will pick up, and they will react and act to the lowest bar the parent sets. So if the parent thinks this kid's not gonna be anything, he's gonna be horrible, that's what they're gonna feel they are gonna be. So when it does come down to a choice like good and evil, it's gonna be already pre-primed for this kid to think he's evil and to do something like kill his father or to become a Sith Lord. Seeing Ben in therapy would be really interesting and make sure I'd be on my best behavior so as not to get my head sliced off. But I think it would be interesting to find out from him, what are the feelings you've had buried? Tell me about this anger. Anger is a really difficult emotion for people to deal with. So I would sit with him in psychotherapy, just asking him, what was it like? What were the feelings that you had? What's the anger that you do have towards your father? Tell me about that relationship. I'd want to know more from him. I have a feeling nobody has listened to him. That is the problem from the beginning. If people had listened to him, then he would feel like there was a place for him in this family, but that wasn't the case. Well, I see our time's up, so I will plan to see you at our next appointment.